Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to another edition of Futsal868 Corner Talks. On Monday, the 4th of October 2021, the Honourable Colin Imbert, MP, Minister of Finance, presented in Parliament a £52.4 billion national budget for the fiscal year 2022. The theme of Trinidad and Tobago's National Budget Statement 2022 was entitled Resilience in the Face of the Global Pandemic. On the sport and youth, he said, Madam Speaker, plans are also underway for this country to host several major sporting events. The government has approved the submission of a bid to host matches in January 2022 of the ICC Men's Under-19 Cricket World Cup, and we are considering the Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Board's interest in hosting some games during England's tour of the West Indies in February 2022. We will also be supporting the Trinidad and Tobago Power Boat Association's International P1 Circuit, which is scheduled for February 2022. We expect that these plans will assist in the activation of our potential to build our sports tourism product. In addition, we will continue to fund our athletes through an enhanced elite athlete assistance program. End quote. According to former UN General Secretary Ban Ki-moon, in 2011 stated sports tourism has the potential to be a powerful tool for development and progress. Today, in episode 70 of Futsal868 Corner Talks, we discuss sport and tourism with the question we hope to answer at the end of this show: is the Caribbean maximizing sport tourism's full potential? Joining us today, we have the pleasure of having Mr. Manohar Ramsaran, former sport tourism manager at the now defunct Tourism Development Company Limited, and Mr. Alan Morrison, treasurer at the National Association of Athletics Administration of Trinidad and Tobago. Good day, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us.
As we start with all shows, I really want to delve into, and both you gentlemen, I'll start with you, Mr. Ramsaran, to give us the definition of sport tourism. Please, do share with us what that is.
Okay, good afternoon again to your viewers or listeners. Sports tourism, a definition is like one hard to find. People say, well, tourism following sports and so on. But I want to go back to when I was a youngster and watching Test cricket and football in those days. We drew lots of crowds. Trinidad and Tobago was a good football team in the early 70s and 60s and so on. And cricket, of course, Test cricket, we filled the Queen's Park Oval every time a Test match was played there. So we had sports tourism without defining it as sport tourism. And we had a lot of tourists coming in with the especially the English team and so on. Not as much as today, but sport tourism has always been with us. And also it has now been evolved as a major financial hub in all over the world. For example, you're looking at the World Cup now in Sharjah, and you see the amount of people coming in there and adding to their coffers. Sports tourism, well, we know it involves both players and people who support the game and so on, but it has now become so big, television and media and all that. And I think that when I opened the on behalf of the government and of Trinidad and Tobago, the 5 stadia, every speech I made, I talk about sport tourism. Although it was not the in thing at the time, I said that these facilities should be used so that we could have sports tourism be attracted and things like that. Also, I make when I was in sports tourism, I went to England in the annual sports tourism forum. I talk about Trinidad and Tobago, inviting cricket teams to come to Trinidad and Tobago to prepare for cricket that will normally start in England around April, May. come to the Caribbean in January, February, the teams could warm up here. But somehow or the other, we had a very negative idea of Trinidad and Tobago being not safe. And the national security was not really safe to the visitors. And that kind of had a stillbirth. But I still believe that the only way we could attract sports tourism is to make our country attractive in crime and so on. And that we must tell people, look, we are ready. We are friendly people. We will treat with you because to really invite tourists to the country, there must be some interest in sports tourism. So basically, we have to prepare the country itself. And of course, for sporting teams to come to us, we must have that development of sports at a higher level so that we can invite somebody and say, well, yeah, it's worthwhile coming to Trinidad because they have a good football team, they have a good cricket team, they have a good whatever, futsal, whatever, and they will come here and take us on in games. And they will bring with them, because you know they have Manchester United. I was in talks with them when I was in tourism. They were thinking about coming to Trinidad and Tobago. But unfortunately, my time was up there and I left the job before it materialized. But we were talking to big clubs to come here. And when they come on a training session, whether it's a month or 2 weeks or whatever, they will bring with them lots of tourists with them. And of course, they will spend their money in Trinidad and Tobago. They will go to our parks, beaches, and so on. And this is what sports tourism is to me, is how could sports tourism add to the coffers of Trinidad and Tobago. And not only that, we could become our athletes, our footballers, cricketers, will become better with the competition. So I still see sports tourism as a really a financial plus for Trinidad and Tobago.
Stillbirth, you call it, Mr. Manohar. Interesting word, and I think that's something we will be exploring a little later. Mr. Morrison, your definition of sport tourism?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. So when we look at sport tourism, as Mr. Ramsaran said, it has to do with persons moving from where they currently are to participate in activity, whether at the level of the athlete or the level of the spectator, whether for recreational purposes or elite level purposes. Also, we have to look at people who just go to sport events to see what it looks like, to be nostalgic about the activities that took place. So really and truly, sport tourism is a social and economic cultural phenomenon where people interact with the places and the activities that are within the location. So for us in the Caribbean, we must have the features that allow persons to be able to actively participate, passively participate, or have some sort of nostalgic feeling when they travel to Trinidad and Tobago as sport tourists.
It's very interesting that you included sporting facilities, because that is, without a doubt, some of the reasons why people travel. You look at the Lord's Cricket Ground in England, Roland Garros in Paris, Maracana Stadium in Brazil, Millennium Rugby Stadium in Wales. Even as a matter of fact, when it comes to us, when I studied at my international masters at the FIFA Master, we visited many of these quote-unquote popular venues, including Wimbledon Stadium, so that we can be able to understand and be a part of the history. And you actually get our long plus tours to showcase this lengthy history of said. Now, with that being the case, I want to jump, and this is your fault, Mr. Morrison, because you're making a jump from you're making a break order, but nevertheless, that's important. TNT boasts of 5 stadia, 7 indoor sport facilities, 6 community swimming pools, 2 aquatic facilities, 1 international cycle velodrome, because we have the other one in Arima. Cricket stadium, Brian Lara, a field hockey arena, and a tennis arena that is now state of the art. looking at their number of golf courses, and not to mention that Skinner Park, the historic Skinner Park, is being done. Remember, our topic is not about Trinidad and Tobago alone. So let's put in some Caribbean perspective here. Grenada has its National Cricket Center we built and we opened in 2007 at a reported cost of 55 million. Similarly, its Athletic Stadium we built in 2016. So we opened in 2016 at a cost of 40 million. Dominica, Warner Park facility, multi-purpose again, US 17 million. With that facility permitting the island nation for the first time to host one-day international cricket matches, Test cricket, and T20 matches. With all of these stadia facilities being built and Trinidad and Tobago having a plethora of them, we have it all over the place, and the government is saying they want to invest more money in the refurbishment of facilities. Let's now speak to sport tourism, facilities, and sustainability. Mr. Ramchan, tell me, at your time as the former manager of sport tourism, where does facilities lie in this whole dynamics of sport tourism, as Mr. Morrison said, and how does sustainability affect it?
I want to believe that we cannot start in a perfect situation. We have, as you mentioned, quite a number of sporting facilities in Trinidad and the Caribbean. What we need, for example, if Trinidad is hosting an event, Trinidad has the best food in the world as far as I'm concerned. We have cultural entertainment that people could be attracted to. We have to marry all these to fill a stadium with, and then they have shows. For example, I always told you the idea that if there's a test match at the Queen's Park Oval, the surrounding shops and so on should have all-night activities with dancers and models and calypsos and steel pan and so on, where we could put the cultural mix with the sporting event. This is something we have to market. We just can't. I mean, we could if we have the best teams in the world coming, but if we don't have it, let people know, let the tourists know that when you come to Trinidad and Tobago, you have some of the better beaches. You have all these cultural activities. You have food, as I mentioned before, that people could come and really splurge and enjoy themselves. It's not that we don't have them, but I remember when I was managing sports tourism, the funding given to me was nothing. That's why I left the job. I couldn't really use that money to do anything, because we have to prepare. If you're doing an event, you have to make sure that you have all, not even the grounds, but you have to have different activities, as I just mentioned, to attract tourists. It just can't come just like that. You have to have good advertisements. You have to have selling your destination. Really and truly, sport tourism is just part of the whole tourism trust, but sports tourism itself, and I'm being proved right that all over the world we see sports tourism attracting billions of dollars. I'm sure when we finish in the cricket T20 being played in the UAE now, they will come out with millions of dollars in profit. And this is how it should be looked at, not just as a one-off thing. Really, we have to be serious about it. We have to attract the best. And we in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, we have not very good administrators. They settle for a little piece and that's it. We have to market ourselves properly. I shudder to think that we have to depend on government for everything. If we host a cricket match at the Oval, we expect the government to give us 100%. And in these times, whether we like it or not, we are in a financial rut, so to speak, because of COVID and pandemic. So we have to start to market ourselves. We have to start to do things that we could become self-sustainable. When you do that, whatever you do, people will know when you are serious, and the sporting bodies must approach government in a meaningful way. Let them know a couple of years before. Let us try something different. Don't just, okay, for example, the cricket on the 19th tournament you're talking about, is if the government doesn't bid, the cricket board wouldn't bid it. The government must bid. They believe that the cricket board can't do it alone. The government must bid for that. And I think that the sporting body should be very much more aggressive in getting events to Trinidad and Tobago. For example, we have the CPL, right, played in the Caribbean. But that is not a development thing. For example, Trinidad play Guyana in a 3-match tournament in Trinidad. We draw big crowds. By having a Trinidad team and a Guyana team, we're going to introduce the youngsters to the game and not only depend on the big boys and so on. So I really and truly, sports tourism could do that. That could sustain what we're going to do. And let me give a scenario. If we play in Guyana, the Oval, right? We have all the steel band, the chutney singers, the calypsonians, and make it a real atmosphere for the weekend. That, to me, that will draw crowds.
You're muted.
Mr. Morrison, I would like to speak to sustainability and facility, but it was
all right.
very.
So as Mr. Ramsaran said,
Go ahead, Mr. Morrison.
okay. So as Mr. Ramsaran said, we need to look into having people more involved. So yes, the government has a role to play, but at the same time, the associations need to ensure that they can woo the private sector to get involved to make it sustainable. Yes, government has a role in development, but at the same time, all stakeholders need to be on board because sport tourism isn't just about the participants and the tourists. We have to look at the spin-off effect into the community and the local businesses that can thrive from having those events here. So if we have more linkages and synergies with the people who may have a vested interest in being a part of the activity and the event, then that could lead to sustainability. From a Tobago perspective, I've always held the view that sometimes the government, and in this case, the Tobago House of Assembly, needs to allow some level of management from the area of the associations that are here locally to manage and operate some of the sporting facilities that would allow them to be able to assist with the cost of funding, maintaining, and even rehabilitating them, because at the end of the day, they are the end users. So when we're looking at sustainability, we can't always rely on the tax dollars from the government, because these are mechanisms by which the same associations can use these facilities to generate revenue through holding events, as Mr. Ramsaran said, and it's about ensuring that there's a full experience. Now, earlier I mentioned social, economic, and cultural. So when we look at the social side of it, it involves persons across the country, across the diaspora even, having an input into how we operate. When we look at economic impact, we look at the persons who may be doing businesses within the community or may even have art, craft, talents to display that they can be involved in demonstrating what we have to offer as a country. And the cultural aspect, that is where we can put our country on show. And as you rightly said, it's about demonstrating what your destination can offer. Because not all the tourists that are going to come for an event are coming to participate or are coming to support. Some people will just come to see what the island has to offer, while the sport is also important to them, but they want to probably stay over for 2-3 days. And that is where you have most of your money being made, as opposed to just coming for the event. So we need to ensure that in order to allow some level of sustainability, we engage all stakeholders and allow them to have an active role in developing our tourism sport product.
Well said. But then some persons might simply ask Mr. Morrison, how are we doing that? And I wanna really and truly step back one moment, because in doing research for this show and also being a sport tourism practitioner, this concept of sport tourism has been bandied for a long time. And I was very impressed by Mr. Ramsaran saying stillbirth, because we have not moved the conversation further. So just for this point, how do we do it? How do we make it sustainable? I just want to put in a point here. In September 2020, in a Guardian article, former board member of the sport company of Trinidad and Tobago and national cricketer Mr. Colin Murray, he says that Tobago, he pointed out that Tobago offers something different to the sporting world through its tranquil environment, making it a key player in what he hopes will be a serious sport tourism plan. Mr. Morrison, you're from the sister isle. How do we see Tobago being a part of that sustainability that we're speaking about? What are the ideas can we generate to be able to have that answered?
So I know previously there was the beach soccer that started here, but that eventually did not materialize any further. But what I think needs to happen is that there needs to be a serious coming together of persons who can be involved with implementation. There's nothing wrong with having good ideas, but we have always fallen short of implementing those good ideas and making them into sustainable reality. So what we really need to do is have, and as I rightly said before, we need to involve everyone. Sport can't sit down by itself and plan the events in the absence of culture. It can't sit down and plan events in the absence of maintenance. It can't plan the sport events in the absence of tourism, of transport. Because one of the issues that some persons used to have with that same beach football activity was that they couldn't get flights to come over. Now, that really not making much sense, because if it is that we want people to come here for the event to witness it, they need to be able to come here hassle-free, mostly where travel is concerned. So if it is that people are looking to come over, but they can't get tickets to come over, then what is the point of having the event if people can't travel to be there to observe it? So I think we need to ensure that all the pieces are put together in the puzzle so that we go to the table with the glass at least full instead of quarter full or half full. And then when it's finished, we are not in a position to ensure that there's a certain level of success for it to achieve the outcome we want. So to answer your question, we need people who are serious about implementation. Anybody could say anything and sound good doing it, but can they do the job that they want to get done?
Mr. Ramson, I would like to bring you in at this point before I give my testimony when it comes to implementation. Mr. Ramson, where are because Mr. Morrison would have spoken to a lot of moving parts, a lot of communication, inter-island, intra-island, organizations, divisions, etc., etc., etc. Tell me from experience, Mr. Ramson, how are these moving parts even coming together? What is the problem? Why is it not gluing? What's wrong? What's happening?
Well, what's wrong, in my experience, we even talk about the beach soccer in Tobago. Well, tourism, when I was there, we sponsored the first, second, and third tournaments. But since I lived there, I heard nothing about it. And I agree with Mr. Morrison that flights and so on were almost impossible to come by. But the whole question of government's intervention in sports and tourism, if you look at the budget statement, not only this year, but for many, many years, sports will get less than 1% of the entire budget. I think the only time we got 3% is when I was minister, and by because of my really aggressive way to get more money into sport. And then we had the stadium built and so on. We have to be most, and I don't think tourism gets much more money than sport anyhow. So here we have these two basic players not being funded by government at all, in a way that I think it should be done. And it's not only this government, you know, this has gone way, way back. Like it's a blueprint that sports must get 1% and tourism must get 1%. And we have to live with that. And to me, these are two areas that we have to look at, because I always talk about developing communities, developing sporting events, developing these things. To me, the best form of social development is to have sporting development and tourism development. When you do these things, they become self-sustainable, and after a while, they'll become a great part of the economy. So I believe that governments now should look at the question of tourism and sports to ensure that they are properly funded. Because if there's something I was pushing for when I was minister, I was at one time I was chairman of the CARICOM Sports Development Company, and I raised the issue of having a Caribbean games. When I met with the ministers in Guyana, we had all ministers of sports there, and Cuba volunteered to host the first Caribbean games. Right, they reached there. So what we have done now is so maybe go there, they have the facilities and so on, and all the Caribbean islands agreed to go, but for some reason that fell away again. Trinidad was ready, we were going to do it, but the other islands, it just fell away. And to me, that would have been, I recommended to the CARICOM ministers that we do it the year before Olympics, so that it could be a kind of forerunner to the Olympics. And everybody thought it was a fantastic idea, but it just didn't happen. And this is one of the frustrations I had, where when we plan good events like this and nothing will happen to them. So really glue, you have to, it is hurting me as I talk to you. You have to really be committed. Our budgets must show, and mine was no different. It's just I got 3% a couple of years, but the 1% tourism and sports. And I believe too that sports and tourism should be linked. It shouldn't be tourism and other things. It should be sports and tourism. That should be one ministry. And the thinking behind that is that we're looking at now how could sports and tourism work together to create some environments that could be money making, could be entertaining, could promote Trinidad and Tobago all over the world. But it didn't happen. I still dream that somebody one day will call me and say, how will this work? And we can make it happen. Sports and tourism should be linked.
I want to say, first and foremost, Mr. Ramcharan, that your dream has come true, because the Caribbean Games is scheduled to take place in next year in Guadeloupe, as a matter of fact. And I'm happy to also note that I am happy as an administrator that the sport of futsal will be played at that Caribbean Games. So it's very interesting to hear the fact that it's so long it took for it to come to fruition, but it has finally.
I'm so really happy. I'm really happy to hear that news, because the then minister of sport in Cuba, he wanted to even finance teams to go to Cuba. They wanted it so badly. They really thought that would have been a great prospect. And then we had in those days good athletes, good athletes that would attract crowds anywhere they go, whether it's from Trinidad, Barbados, whatever. We had a good crop of athletes, and then we were doing about 6 Olympic sports. But I'm glad to hear it is happening now. Thank God for that.
Coming back to Mr. Morrison, when he spoke about the moving parts, and I'm just going to give a testimony as you guys, as a sport tourism practitioner, our organization, we're in the hat as managing director of a sport management company called SW Touring Limited. We host the Tobago Masters Football Tournament, which has been running for 8+ years. And I say plus because 8 years in existence, but 2 years was taken off, one due to the pandemic and another because of reasons beyond our control. But nevertheless, we grew that event organically from 6 teams to 24 teams in the over 40 and over 50 FETMAT football circuit. When we started off the tournament, the biggest stakeholder was that in Barbados. And literally, when we went across to do some marketing, mind you, it might have been ambush marketing, that came as a result. And Mr. Ramcharan will be very much disturbed to hear it, but I must say it. That came as a result because we had meetings with TDC, we had meetings with other government stakeholders. And all we literally asked them is to be able to have the Tobago Masters Football Tournament as part of their marketing trust when they go to branding events, when they go to tourism conferences, when they go to London, to have it a part of their market sales to their North American agents, their European agents, etc., etc. Mind you, even after 5 years of existence and seeing the progress in terms of our reports and so forth, that simple request of saying, we don't want money from you all, we just want you to have the brand be a part of it, was never taken seriously. I see you put your hand by your head, Mr. Ramson. You have to do that in truth. Because now it leads me to the question, are we really serious? Because now I'm not just here as a moderator, but I'm here as a sport tourism practitioner who can tell you my woes. And it is 8 years of building a brand organically to the point whereby Tobago Masters Football Tournament is one of the most looked sought after tournaments when it comes to fat match football in the Caribbean and now by extension North America. While
Like we lost you.
we had rugby sevens in Tobago.
Yeah, I was part of that when
Yes, we lost it. Mr. Stolmeyer picked up and went to Barbados. We had sailing regatta. We had wind sailing, wind sports regatta. We had, as you all mentioned, beach soccer. And we had other, as a matter of fact, a full calendar of events from January straight to December.
Yeah, I was part of that with Mr. Stolmeyer and with other promoters. I took active part in most of Tobago's sporting regattas and so on in that few years I was there. But I also was in Tour Barbados, where Trinidad and Tobago over 40 cricket side. And you'll be surprised to know that many people follow that. And even Trinidad and Tobago, now we have 1 or 2 leagues who organize over 50 cricket, over 40 cricket, and they have more following than the normal cricket. So there is a room for the seniors, really and truly. I know that we have over 35 West Indies team. They could join some big competition and see where we go from there. We really need to keep the people in the game, and people will still like them because of the name. Trinidad, they like names. And we could use the name that we've had in the past, and people come to see them. People, even at my age, people come to see, well, Minister, you are the first minister we spoke to. So people still have that kind of allegiance to their superstars and officials and so on. So we could build on it.
Definitely. When it comes to building a name, we're going to take a quick break because we want to be able to see a video from the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago that was released last year. And when we come from this break, we're going to straight to you, Mr. Morrison, because we want to hear more from you when it comes to Tobago's output, such as the Falcon Games and also what the NAAA thinks about sport tourism and how can we continue to make it move from being a talk show to actuality. You're watching Futsal868 Corner Talks, episode 70, where we speak sport and tourism. Let's see what Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago says about sport tourism.
Where can you find the ideal location for world-class sports facilities that inspire the best from your athletes? Trinidad is the place to go. Welcome to Trinidad, the hub of the English-speaking Caribbean. Securely located below the hurricane belt, we are well positioned as a convenient link between Latin and North America. Trinidad is serious about sport. With the recent development of state-of-the-art athletic facilities, stadia, and accommodation, Trinidad is an exceptional destination for training and competition year-round. Winter is not a worry here. Our National Aquatic Center is host to some of the most prestigious collegiate and national teams from the USA and Canada, providing perfect conditions for competing and training at any time of the year. The National Cycling Velodrome is an advanced training and competitive center for cycling's elite. Fitted to world-class standards, the velodrome fosters top-form Grand Prix performances. The National Racket Center is a cutting-edge space designed to international standards. It is home to the Tennis Training Center, which provides training on a temporary or permanent basis, and is also ideal for hosting international tennis competitions. The Trinidad and Tobago Football Federation grounds are the site of various world sporting events, with our Atto Bolden Stadium being named the home of football by the FIFA president. Recently, the stadium was host to the 2018 FIFA World Cup Final Round qualifiers, CONCACAF 2018 Caribbean Women's Qualifiers, and CFU 2018 Women's Challenge Series. Trinidad's contemporary facilities across the island are second to none in the region. With world-class developments in healthcare services, such as the newly opened and conveniently located Couva Hospital, visitors can be assured of best-in-class medical technology and services. And when you train or compete in Trinidad, you enjoy not only top-level facilities, but easy access to the cultural and financial capital of the Caribbean in the perfect athletic environment. To go for greatness. Trinidad is proud to host world-class events, and we are here to help you reach the top of your athletic goals. Trinidad, welcome to the best place for you to aspire and achieve.
It's very, for me, it's very, I see it as Visit Trinidad. That was the last snapshot. Mr. Morrison, where's the Tobago? I know that the sport company of Trinidad and Tobago is shut, but a used video like that. There's no Tobago. You have to speak to us about that, but speak to us as regards to a little more to sport tourism, Tobago, Falcon Games, and Tripoli.
All right. So when we look at sport tourism as it refers to track and field in Tobago, there are many benefits that can be derived. Now, you mentioned Falcon Games, which usually takes place on the weekend before Easter, which is the last preparation meet for athletes that are getting ready to go to the Character Games, which is usually hosted on the Easter weekend. So for a lot of countries, they would travel to Trinidad and Tobago, and in the events that, in the circumstances where you have chartered flights going to the Character Games, they just, come to Trinidad and Tobago, come to Tobago, compete, stay over a while, and then join us on the charter to go to the game. So that in itself presents an opportunity for some level of sport tourism where participation and even spectators are concerned, because on the charter flights, there are also people who go to support the national teams when they go. So if we are to look at sport in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly Tobago, from the side of athletics, we could have approximately 6 events in Tobago that can satisfy or meet the needs of the sporting population locally, regionally, and even internationally. So we have the Falcon Games. We also have Zenith Relays. There's also the inclusion of the most recent one, which is the Kaizen Panthers Paradise Challenge. And there used to be a Tobago Games, which is no longer there. So hopefully with the other clubs that we have on the islands, there are proposals to bring additional events that would allow the sport to be more prominent. Now, when you look at the other sports where football is concerned, netball, tennis, I know tennis had a really good thing going where they had, not sure the name of the tournament, but it used to be sponsored by RBC. Now, that in itself would have brought persons here on a wider scale from across the region to qualify for later on tournaments in that sport. So what we need to do as an island is really capitalize on the different sports that happen at different times so that we have a full calendar to provide to people to be able for them to see what can be on offer if they decide to come and visit Tobago during the times that they propose to. So where Tobago is concerned, there are opportunities for the events to be hosted. Now, I heard you mention about the role of the N3s in all of this, and there was the proposal made to the N3s for the hosting of the NACAC Age Group Championships, which was added to be in was the first state? I'm trying to remember. But essentially, when we came back from the age group championships in El Salvador, I met with the executive of the Tobago Athletic Committee because I'm also on that organization and brought a proposal to the N3s, and they were open to the conversation of making a request to the government for them to allow us to host the NACAC age group championships. Now, even though that may not be a very signature event on the track and field calendar, it is very important for Trinidad and Tobago because in the 2017 and 2019 versions, we have been the champions. So that in itself would have added another booster for support locally, seeing that some of the athletes who would have been medalists at the 2019 games are now eligible for the 2021 games, which is now hosted in Nicaragua. So had the pandemic not happened the way it happened, Tobago may have been in a position to host that game for the first time, where it would have brought a lot of countries to Tobago in addition to parents, because parents also would travel to see their kids compete. And track and field in Tobago is a very big thing. So even locally, persons would have been here to really witness that event. And now that we also have Tobago Sports Live as a media support organization, they will now be in a position to stream the event, and hopefully we would have been able to have some conversations with them to really discuss certain aspects of advertising to promote the island during the different intermissions that would have occurred. So where Tobago is concerned, there is potential. However, the relevant individuals, divisions, entities, private sector organizations need to really come together to be implementers. Looking at the principal agent theory, the principal can only set policy. So government sets the policy and yes, this is what they want to see. But we have seen time and time again that they don't possess the skill set to be the implementers, and that's where the agents come in. So government needs to understand that their role is to facilitate the activity and allow the persons who can implement it the best way for success do that. Because most times, and I heard Mr. Ramsaran said stillbirth, most times the stillbirth occurs when persons who are not qualified towards implementation get involved and just mess it up. So what we need people to understand is their role, responsibility, and function. What is your role in having this event here? What is your responsibility? What do we want you to do? And once everybody understands their roles, responsibilities, and function, we can have a better product for all stakeholders to really get the returns that they're looking for.
Well said, Mr. Morrison. Before we continue on that point, because I really would like to have a question in regards to that, I want to just acknowledge questions that is coming in from our viewers. And one question states, with all the state-of-the-art facilities as per video, what can be done to optimize the use of these facilities? Gentlemen, anyone of you would like to take that question?
Well, first to begin, I believe that video should be one of Ministry of Tourism trust in the international market, not for us to see in Trinidad and Tobago. That should be an investment. I think it was a well-done video, a few criticisms here and there, but if you like add more like cricket and more about Tobago and sell that abroad, it will be worth something. And of course, the facilities here, I want to assure people, I don't know if policies have changed so much, but it is available to all people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Mr. Morrison?
So I've heard one radio commentator in Tobago say usually that the facilities aren't made here to stay and look good and fall apart. They need to be used. However, we need to ensure that there's managed use of the facilities. And if we want to optimize the use of the facilities, we need to ensure that there are persons to be able to use them, which is where we have to develop the sporting talent. And we need to have events to allow us to be in them to be used. So we can't put the cart before the horse, because we could end up with these wonderful buildings and then they're probably just going to get dust, mold, and cobweb. So what we need to do is ensure that we have developed the right skill set here locally to be able to draw persons to use the facilities, because what we don't want to have is a situation where we have these outstanding facilities and the local persons are not given the opportunity to utilize them. And when they travel abroad, it's the first time they've been exposed to certain things. So how can we optimize their use? Have the sport advance at the developmental stage so that we can push to the elite level stage and have events that can facilitate the elite level development as well as the developmental side of the sport.
Again, another great point by you, both of you gentlemen, which leads me to a statement I'm going to read out, and I would like to hear your views as regards to such. The overall success of any sporting tourism event is dependent upon management, for which Mr. Morrison has been alluding to from his last comments. Poor management due to financial impropriety, poor planning, lack of efficient customer service, and a host of other management drawbacks may serve as a major Achilles heel for the success of any sports tourism event. Ramsran, based on your being a manager, did you have the right people? Did you have the quantity? And also in terms of persons who were hosting sport tourism ventures, do you think that there was proper management by SEB to make their events successful and also sustainable?
Yeah, I want to say that I had 3 people working with me, and definitely that was not enough for tourism. But again, we saw it as a start to catapult ourselves into the future. And I thought the staff was enough, but then what affected me most was the finance, the budget that I was given. And I want to make another quick point here. Maybe a little off the question, but Tobago, Mr. Morrison, Tobago has no cricket facility that was approved by the CWI to host international matches. When I was there earlier, different incarnation, we had the Shore Park facility that we hosted Trinidad games, 50 over games at the regional level. But from what I heard, and very recently, is that there is no facility approved by CWI in Tobago. And to me, this is a big blow, because I know we have big grounds in Tobago. I played on a couple of them. I can't remember the names offhand, but there's one in Canaan there, which is to me a big ground. There's one in Plymouth, and the ones in the Roxborough and so on, they're a bit small. But at least one ground should be chosen. I don't want to choose the ground for them. And Tobago should really upgrade a ground to host CWI matches. It's a shame that Tobago is left out of this important, if you're going forward in sports tourism. And I want to tell you, if there are good matches in Tobago, you'll have sports tourism from Trinidad going to Tobago to look at a good cricket match. And unfortunately, Tobago seem to forget cricket. I don't know what is happening in Tobago. We have a lot of politicians around, but I think we should look at creating one of the grounds into a cricket facility approved by CWI.
Interesting comment. Mr. Morrison, you would like to respond to that or make comment on the last question?
Well, I can't respond specifically to the comment on the cricket, but I know Canaan Bonaccord grounds is extremely large. But that may have some challenges, because I know that is also a very used ground for football as well. So I guess that is where the the W's can probably be worked out to the benefit of both sports. But in going back to the question or the point you raised concerning the management is important for the success of anything. If as well, there's an old adage that says the fish does rotten from the head. So if you have bad management, then you don't expect that the event is going to be, successful, because at the end of the day, management sets the tone. Leadership allows what follows after. So we have to ensure that we have the management of the events occurring that allows it for success. And what I want to also point out is that sometimes as associations, we may believe that we have all the resources within to execute an event. But we also should look at what competencies lie within other federations or other associations that we could utilize to ensure that our event has the same level of success. And that is where the synergies are supposed to happen. Because at the end of the day, if I am aware that football had a really good tournament and I want to have similar or exceed their sort of attendance or success, it would be important for me to find out from them, what steps did you take? What did you do? It makes no sense reinventing the wheel, because we don't really have time for that in the space of making things perfect. We all can't go and make the same mistake. So if somebody or an association or federation has perfected something, it bodes well for the other associations or federations to tap into some of those resources. It may not be the same sport, but they may be able to give you ideas that allow you to be able to scale higher in the levels of success that you need in a faster time.
That's a very interesting point, which leads me to my next question, gentlemen. Do you think we need to have, if there isn't already, because I have not heard about it since in doing the research for this show, do you think we need to have a sport tourism association who can work and be the voice for the efficient and effective execution of sport tourism ventures on the Twin Islands state? Noting that since the breaking down of TDC, the Tourism Development Company Limited, into two separate entities, one in Trinidad and one in Tobago, from what has been told is that both entities do not have a sport tourism department or unit. So my question, do you think that there should be a sport tourism and a sport tourism association that can work with all governmental agencies to help with this trust?
Okay, let me go first. Okay, I totally.
Mr. Morrison, put your hand on your chin, boy. Like that was like I hit you with a right hook, there, Mr. Morrison. What? Go ahead, Mr. Ramson.
Yeah, I believe that's a great idea. All the practitioners in tourism, sports tourism, should really get together and make it happen. There's nothing wrong with that. Who is going to be the driver of this is a big question, but it would be nice to really have some of the drivers in sports tourism meet and discuss it, because I believe there's strength in unity. I always believe that if people are united, as a former minister, I will tell you, when I see unity, I should think twice. When I see people scattered all over the place, easy going for me. And that is really telling you everything. There is strength, there is purpose in unity. We have to get the person to look at that and to make sure it happens. You know, because look how long I bought up this Caribbean sports, on, off. And thanks to this program and thanks to you, Mr. Edwards, that I have heard about that. And I want to, if you have the opportunity to extend to people that maybe let's make this Caribbean sports a success.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes, sir. So I think I would agree with Mr. Ramsaran in that it is a good idea, and the challenge would be, from where does the leadership come? And that in itself would present its own challenges, because what I'm seeing with something like that is this. If the government is giving certain portions of money to different sporting associations or organizations to host various events, why not just pool all that money into one entity, and as the events come, they utilize it to host the event, and then the returns from that event help to fund the other events? That is how we can lead to sustainability. Instead of splitting up the pie and everybody getting a little piece to start with in their own sections, let's just use the whole thing. And as we go down the road, it helps everybody get to a point of sustainability, because the money that we get in the beginning could be used for one event. That is a success. We move to the other one. That is a success. And then part of it is left with the same association, so that it kind of becomes a revolving fund for organizations to host the events successfully, thus generating enough revenue and allowing for sustainability. That is how I see something like that being able to function and work. And it would be important for all the associations to really appreciate each other's existence, because one could spin off into the other. People are likers of many sports. So somebody who may be interested in cricket, may be interested in football, may be interested in volleyball. I would love to be in a volleyball match to see how it goes, because it's something I used to frequent a lot when I was in college. But I mean, since I've been here, the most I've been involved in is recreational volleyball in the beach or in school when we have competitions with our students. So outside of that, I have never been to an event where that is something that is provided as a sport tourism product. So yes, the association can bring some benefit to all the event promoters as well. And it's just for us to be able to appreciate where the leadership comes from and allow for that objective look at making benefits to all stakeholders. And I stress on objective, because some persons want to get involved to see about themselves and to see about their association. It can't be about you alone.
Talk the thing. I like that. Talk the thing. So we're moving on. In 2015, with a full calendar event, remember my date, 2015, Jamaica launched Jamaica Sport, an initiative to develop sports tourism and to diversify the island's tourism offerings. Chaired by well-known businessman and corporate executive Chris Daring, the committee mandate was to bring more sport-focused events to Jamaica, boost tourist arrivals, and position the island as a major sport destination. Let's fast forward to the People's National Movement manifesto, where they look to position Trinidad and Tobago as being the premier sport tourism venture or sport tourism identity brand in the Caribbean. That leaves me with a question. What does a sport Tobago look like? How do we, and again, I got this question from Mr. Nicholas Neves. Thank you very much, Nicholas. I'm going to, reformat your question a little bit. He's doing his doctorate in sport tourism, by the way. So congratulations on that. How are we going to take our local heritage or culture to create this brand, Sport Trinbago, which makes it unique to our region? Note that since the inception of Sport Jamaica in 2015, if you were to do a Google search of it, it is non-existent anymore. Mr. Ramazan.
Well, you have me stumped there, because my mind went running 100 meters. Do we have any such businessman in Trinidad who would take up the mantle of leading anything in this country? Like talking about sustainable development, pouring back some resources in the communities. I don't think we have. Because most if they accept that, what they will get in return, I believe our businessmen, and I can knock them, they just will invest if there's a political gain or financial gain. But we really, the country is going through a real period now, and somebody must take responsibility to rebuild, to help us rebuild. I am a cricketer, as you know, and cricket clubs will suffer the most when this pandemic has finished with us. and who will help us revive these clubs. These clubs were built over 50 years and more with tedious input from the communities and so on, but now that has, communities are now back in their homes, sitting down, looking at television, and how are we going to revive that? This is something that we have to look at. And really and truly, this is an eye-opening program. Maybe I slept on it for a little while, and when you look at it, the problems are still there. How are we going to get out of this pandemic unhurt? Those who survive, really to be a challenge for all of us. And to ask you to follow Jamaica's lead. I always admire Jamaica in their sports. For example, when I was Minister of Sports and we opened the stadia across Trinidad and Tobago, the then Minister of Sports in Jamaica, to be made Prime Minister a little later on, Portia Simpson Miller, she called me and she said, Mr. Ramsar, I would like to talk to you. I said, sure, Minister, what's the problem? She said, you have all the facilities, and if I had that, you know what happened in Jamaica? She said, we have one stadium, that's the office of the National Stadium, and they play all their sports there. Here we just opened 5 football venues, and what happened? We didn't see the input, we didn't see people coming forward to assist coaches to make it work, because a facility is not all. You need input by having good coaches, good sporting organizations, and so on. And it didn't happen. So I want to agree that let's get an ombudsman in sports, tourism to make it work.
Mr. Morrison.
Okay, so what I think we need to do in Trinidad and Tobago, if we are to have some sort of initiative along those lines, is decide which spectrum of the sport tourism area we want to focus on. It makes no sense for us trying to be jack of all trades and master of none. So Trinidad and Tobago has a very rich cultural background. And I think where we can maximize our sport tourism development is on the area of event itself. Give people an experience that they would die for. Give people an experience they want to come back and have more, enjoy. Jamaica has a culture of sport, which is something that we lack. So until we develop that culture of sport within the population, having a sport tourism event for the participation really wouldn't do us much justice. So while we would have the sport tourism event to bring persons to participate, our emphasis should be on having the event so that persons who come to the event would have an experience that leaves them satisfied and wanting to recommend persons to come to whatever other sport event we have in Trinidad and Tobago. And I think that's where we need to go, because we don't have the facilities for the nostalgic aspect of it. And if we have an event good enough, probably like this meet in Jamaica, there's the Grenada Invitational and there's the Racers Track and Field Classic, I think it is, where persons will go just to be there to see the event. Now that's where the passive sport tourism comes in. So instead of us trying to go for active, we can probably go towards sports tourist event or passive sports tourism that allows persons to really come here and have that experience that leaves them satisfied that they made the right choice to be here. And I think that is where we may have success. We need to decide what are we good at and specialize on that. And then later on, we can branch off into the other areas.
With that being said, a quick question here. You'll be a jack of all trades. Does that mean that we're going to dabble in every single sport? Or as Mr. Neves asked, what are the key sports we should target when it comes to sport tourism and the brand Sport Trinbago? Do you think that we should do all sports or just a key sport? Mr. Ramshan, I'm sure that was a question thrown out by your colleagues, your government colleagues, as well as other persons in your 3-man team. Should we focus on, just 3, 4, 5 sports? So anybody who comes with a proposal, we entertain them.
We had many proposals, but then when you look at them, they're all looking for a little play in the sun, and you can't be angry with them. You almost get a sports tourism proposal daily. But then how does it impact the Trinidad and Tobago? How much money? Because I want to tell you that $20,000 cannot really promote an event, because an event really needs a lot much more than just two football and a goal post. You need much more than that. You need promotions. You need advertisements. You got to sell the thing. And I believe this is where we lacked it. The powers that be that are now in charge of tourism and so on, they don't understand the full impact of sports tourism. Like, for example, Carnival might be held next year, whatever, that's not my call. But building around Carnival, we could have some sporting events, maybe from Ash Wednesday go back for those who are interested. We know people come here to fit and they want to lime and so on. But indeed, it has to be a all-round focus on tourism. Tourism is not just a one sphere thing. It must be made attractive and really interesting. To answer your question, it is difficult to say which sport will give the limelight, because some sports believe they know all. Some sports will come without knowing anything, and it's there where the challenge lies. How do we promote these things? How much money is the organization willing to spend? What kind of personnel they have to do the thing? We can remember in Tobago, when I was there, I was lucky to see cycling. I don't know if it still exists. I'm going to apologize. If it's still there, I'm happy. The cycling around Tobago. We had the seven-size rugby. We had the beach football. We had the kite flying. We had a few seaside sports that I initiated with of course, with the help or the people I initiated and I assisted. So really and truly, this is what I wanted to see: development in every sphere. Because some people might like swimming, and some people wouldn't like swimming. Some people would like to play cricket. Some people wouldn't like to play cricket. How develop these small niches to have the overall impact of what we are talking about, tourists and sports? Because a player, participant is also a tourist. Remember, sport tourism includes the players, the participants, as well as the supporters and the people who come to look and so on. So to develop a whole package, and to develop Tobago, for example, always come to me because I did a lot of work, I think, in Tobago, assisting this group. And every group in Tobago, when I used to go Easter weekend, sometimes I had 4 events to go to, because they all coincided with each other. The go race and what have you, and Buku and all that. And then you go through Tobago. It was real fun to go to all these small events. At the end of the day, it brings people to Tobago, and that is what was important from the sports tourism aspect.
Let's take a quick look at what our viewer is saying. Mr. Karen Mother says, sport tourism isn't only for elite levels. There are tremendous opportunities that can be had at the development level for sport tourism. Youth travel with their parents. And I think that Mr. Morrison would have spoken to that when it comes to the plans that one of the organizers from Tobago would do in as regards to athletics. Correct, Mr. Morrison?
Yes, that is correct. And one of the events that probably is a very large flagship event in the Caribbean region is the Carifta Games. Now, if you pay attention to the Carifta Games, there are a lot of persons there. And from my own personal experience, being a coach on a national team, going to different countries that hosted the games, in 2018, I would have went with the national team to Bahamas. And then in 2019, I went back to Bahamas for vacation. So as Mr. Ramsaran said, the participants are also tourists. So even though I would have went for being involved in the sport at the national level, that did not provide me the opportunity to enjoy the destination as I would have liked to. Because of what I was exposed to when I went to participate, I then went back as a tourist to explore the island in ways that I couldn't have when I was participating. And this is why it's important for us to host events, because the benefits may not be at the time of hosting the event. Because by the time I went to Bahamas the following year, I had to find accommodation, I had to find transport, I had to pay for food, I had to pay to go to the different venues. So there was a lot of spend on a personal level, even a year after the event had gone. And that is why it's important, even we were going to have events here, that attract the persons and give them something of what they can see if they were not participating. And you ask the question as to which sport. I believe we should just target the low-hanging fruits in the initial instance. And by low-hanging fruits, I mean the events that we have a decent handle on managing. Because what we will be judged on is our management of the event towards execution. And if we can manage and execute those events well enough, then that helps to build reputation of our ability to host, manage, and execute those events. And yes, we can try the other sports that may be non-traditional because they may have their own following. That allows us a bit of diversity in terms of what we're looking for. So at the same time, while we maximize on the things that we are doing well already, we can now introduce the other events to get better at. So while we're not going to be jack of all trades, we are going to have enough trades to be able to be very skilled at how we implement and execute.
That leads us to where we should have started, but I love the flow of the conversation nevertheless. Many persons in this would ask, so what are the economic benefits of sport tourism? From our research, the following: revenue generation from the increased demand for hotel accommodation, transportation services, food and beverage, entertainment, television, and media coverage. I'm going to add one more. Sport tourism can help to reduce the level of poverty in communities through the development of small and micro business enterprises and the upskilling of community members to welcome, host, and serve the sports tourism visitor. How do we tie in sport tourism and economic development in our region? Noting all of the benefits that I would have spoken to, and a terminology that is very much fitting for Trinidad and Tobago, that the globe is seeing, sportainment. Really and truly, we know it, we live it. We are the biggest limers. The tournament in Barbados, the Masters Football Tournament in Barbados, is not the same if a Trinbagonian team is not there. The vibes is totally different. So we in Trinidad and Tobago naturally know about sportainment. But nevertheless, let's not digress too far. How do we tie sport tourism into economic development, noting the economic benefits that I would have read out from sport tourism? Mr. Ramsaran.
Yeah, I was looking at television recently and I saw where they were advertising for people to come back to sport. You must have seen it where they have one person sitting in a stadium and then they're talking about coming back to the football and so on after the pandemic. And what I noted was in the yard, you see various trucks and what we call vans in Trinidad and Tobago lining up there selling food and things to drink. This is what you hinted at. It is a community thing, and we must never forget that the caller who messaged us talk about how we deal with the community. This is where we lost it, you know. I mean, I hate to go back to my day, but when we were youngsters, we had Eastern games, we had Southern games, we had Northern games, and they were just local athletes or a few foreign participants, and these grounds used to be filled. Walker Park in Caroni, Texaco, Guaracara Park, here's the Crawford, and before the Oval. These games with local athletes used to fill these places, but we really, somewhere along the line, either we become too modernized or something where we lose total connection with the communities. And I believe that community tourism should be brought back, integral part of sport tourism. And then we could say we're going somewhere. You can't leave out one. You can't say, well, this is not important. Everything is important. And when I talk here, I look at go back to our national budget. Who has the biggest spend? Ministry of National Security, sometime education, and down the road, the bottom of the ladder is sports and tourism and community development and so on. I'm not blaming governments, you know. maybe the people who started it, they die how they started, and the framework remain the same. Unless somebody come tomorrow and say, look, we're going to change this, talking about social development in a more meaningful manner, we will continue to be seen as people looking for handouts and so on. And that's unfortunate. And you said enriching the community, somebody talk, Mr. Morris talk about reducing poverty. All these things could help. I remember I go to Tobago, the person used to make the pineapple on the store bay. She came into my office and said she wanted to go into a small business. And when she talked about selling pumpsity, I immediately gave her a grant and also a personal contribution to go ahead and start the business. And whenever I go to Tobago, I don't know if she's still alive, she will see me and talk to me and say, look, she's doing quite well. It's a little business. We have to encourage people to wean them away from poverty. And as we are the topic of sport, there is no better than that. When a football game is played at the Oval, we have people selling outside at the stadium. Wherever we have events, we have small people coming out there peddling their goods. So it's an all-round thing. I keep talking about you all-round. That's how we have to approach this.
Mr. Neves? Mr. Neves? You hearing us, Mr. Neves? While Mr. Neves is while we waiting for Mr. Neves, I just have a quick question coming in from one of our guests as well, Mr. Nicholas Neves. I was saying Mr. Neves is Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison, sorry, Mr. Morrison. My apologies, sir. We have a question from Mr. Neves. Do we market Trinidad differently from Tobago, as Tobago will provide opportunities for niche sports versus the traditional sports played in Trinidad? But before we answer that question, Mr. Morrison, do you want to take on the point that was made by Mr. Ramsaran when it comes to economic benefits derived from sport tourism?
Yes, so there are many different levels that economic benefits could be derived, and they could be derived at the personal level in a more rapid way than at the national level holistically. But each segment is going to add to the national development aspect of it. So when we have the events, we have infrastructure being built, we have infrastructure being improved. Now, once the improvement in infrastructure continues along that path, then that could now lead to a better quality of life for persons living in those areas. It doesn't happen here in our jurisdiction, but when we look at the Pan Am Games that recently took place in Peru, the athletes' village was then going to be converted into low-cost housing for some of the residents there. So for them, sport tourism, building the facilities for the hosting of the event was a benefit to the residents, because now they were able to have accommodation or houses or apartments, who want to have a better description, for them to be able to live in afterwards. So therefore, it was a twofold aspect for the government to build the facility, the village, for use of the event, and then transfer it into a housing community. So those are some of the events that sport tourism can have as it leads to economic development of the individuals. And then the money that is made from sport tourism can be reinvested in the community. And Mr. Ramsaran mentioned having that level of community engagement. And I think we need to start building from the ground up so that we have a greater appreciation, because I think what we need to develop here is a culture of sport support, as opposed to a culture of bandwagonism that we usually see during these large event occurrences. So we need to understand who our athletes are, and we need to be able to support them from the community level and then travel with them at the national level. And that in itself, when persons see that we are appreciative of our sporting talent, it can be a bit infectious in terms of them wanting to be a part of what we generate in terms of energy for our levels of sport development.
Totally well said. Can we just jump quickly to Mr. Neves, and then we will answer two more questions as we look to wrap up this episode of Futsal868 Corner Talks. And I want to say thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of it. Again, I'm going to put up Mr. Neve's question on the chat. And Mr. Ramsaran, I'm going to read it out to you and ask you, at your time at TDC, what is this true? Do we market Trinidad differently from Tobago, as Tobago may provide opportunities for niche sports versus the traditional sports played in Trinidad?
More time in Tobago sports tourism than Trinidad, because Trinidad is such a big place that you can't really spend a little bit of money we have to really have a meaningful sports tourism project. But in Tobago, we have very aggressive entrepreneurs. They want to do the little things, and I really believe that Tobago is an ideal tourist destination, whether it's sports or other tourism. And you know, with sports, I remember spending the weekend with a couple of these events, and the fellas will go after the sport, they will go on Lime and go to the beach and all kind of thing and come back in the morning. So they enjoy the Tobago all around Trinidad. That's a bit difficult to do. So I really enjoy the smaller markets and smaller events that were held in Tobago. So I showed a lot of partition towards Tobago.
Mr. Morrison?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Neves in that it's easier to manage in terms of the size of the population that you want. And when we look at niche opportunities, persons are willing to pay more for niche opportunities as opposed to the mass parts of it. So if it's something that is unique and gives them that holistic experience, then yes, I think we can attract those type of persons to Tobago once it is that we manage and execute our programs properly.
I want to say thank you very much to everyone who chimed in, asked questions, made comments for this episode. We're going to end with one further question. The question that we started off this conversation with. And I know it says, is the Caribbean maximizing sport tourism's full potential? For the sake of this conversation, I'm going to revisit it. Is Trinidad and Tobago maximizing sport tourism's full potential? Mr. Ramsaran?
I definitely think not. I believe there's a lot of scope for more aggressive marketing of our product. And really and truly, we have to, and the number one thing we have to look at is how do we develop our athletes? You know, we have to sell them across. We did a good job with T20, but now that seems to be waning because of the stars are a bit old. So we have to look at giving some more shelf life. And once that is organized, and I don't know what economic benefits directly that are coming to the islands, to the territories. I don't know what. I think I know, but I don't want to say it often. The CPL franchise, they sort of hog everything, and governments in the quest for sport tourism invest a lot of money, but I've not seen any returns that show me that it's being well done. So I think that the Caribbean Games, for example, will be something that will be managed by our local governments, and really there could be a real input into the coffers of who will be hosting it. And I really am excited about the Caribbean Games as a model that we could follow. And to answer your question, generally, we are not doing nearly enough to assist sport tourism in the Caribbean.
Mr. Morrison, your closing comments as regards to question?
So I would have to agree with Mr. Ramsaran that we are not realizing, or we are not maximizing on our potential. And I think we need to really take a step back and assess where we want to go and then decide how we're going to get there. Because I think for far too long, we come up with good ideas and they sound good, they look good on paper, but we do not plan how we're going to get there. We don't have the steps towards achieving it. And I think we need to really take some time and sit down with the relevant stakeholders to decide how best we can execute these ideas that we have or if we need to revisit the ideas and make them workable. Because at the end of the day, you have to treat with the person who is on the ground, because they would understand the climate that they're operating in. And if you believe that they can be operating at a higher climate, as Mr. Ramsaran said, you need to develop them to that standard that you want so that we all can be at a level for success. So development of the individuals that are going to be implementing is important, and understanding what we intend to achieve and identifying the steps to how we're going to get there is what is needed for us to actually start to maximize on our potential.
To both gentlemen, noting that we are missing Mrs. Brown, but we know that she will join us in another episode, I want to say thank you very much to both of you all for joining us on this Sunday evening. I said it was an hour, Mr. Ramson. I apologize. We went on for an hour and 26 minutes. I know we could have talked further, but it really leaves me wanting to have further conversation as regards to sports tourism, because it is part of my passion. And I really believe that we can speak more to and get more persons into this think tank to help us create solutions and also enact these solutions to make Tobago a true hub for sportainment and really and truly build on who we naturally are, a people of pulse, a people of vibrancy, a people that knows how to entertain. With that being said, I wish both of you all God's richest blessings. Mr. Ramson, thank you for, on a personal note, I want to say thank you very much for your support. You may not know it, but you have supported me and mine in times. And I want to say thank you very much for that. We will have a conversation about it afterwards. So
I remember the name, I can't remember what the event was. Yeah. And to Mr. Morrison, I think for a youngster, you are quite knowledgeable in the field, and we need people like you. And if you could use your influence in Tobago, your MP who's the Minister of Sports, Tobago needs a ground for international matches.
Thank you very much, sir.
So to Mr. Morrison and to Mr. Ramson, be blessed, and to your families as well. We wish God's richest blessings to you all. And thank you again. Until we meet again, have a good one. Bye, gentlemen.
Bye.
So that was another episode of Futsal868 Corner Talks, where we spoke to sport and tourism. Amazing, isn't it? There's a lot that we have learned. We learned it from persons who have been a part of the National Trust for Sport Tourism. Mr. Ramshawn, who sat in the hot seat as a sport minister and also as a manager, sport tourism at the now defunct Tourism Development Company Limited, and Mr. Morrison, our Tobagoan counterpart, who is a treasurer at the NAAA. Thank you very much once again for being a part. And as always, I keep saying it every single time, guys, if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go ahead and do it, and also share with a friend.
Storyblocks Audio.
Everybody asks, where do we get all these videos, all these graphics from? Yeah, we have our own media house. If you want to get more information, as you guys said, feel free to contact us. Futsal868@gmail.com. We can make it come to life. That's also sportainment. We do it every single day. Once again, have a great week. See you all next week. Futsal868 Corner Talks. Until next time, we out. Bye-bye.